Hey guys, this is Amos and welcome to CP2 Introduction to Provision for Building Services. So this is just another short video which will give a bit of an overview of what we're looking at in terms of building services. And I've got a model here, very basic model here of a multi-storey building, and I've got some services on the side that we're going to look at briefly. Firstly, let's look at the definition for building services. A provision brought into or taken out of the building without which the building would not be habitable by humans or fit for purpose. So what that really means is building services are an intrinsic part of the building and it can't operate without them. When we talk about building services, we mean electricity, which covers lighting, power, heating, and generators. We talk about telephone and data, which is internet, broadband, fibre optics. We're talking about water, which is hot, cold, chilled, plumbing and drainage. We talk about air conditioning, which is ventilation, supply and extract, and heating and cooling. Vertical transportation, which is lifts, and horizontal transportation, which can be travelators, for example. Fire services, which looks at alarms, smoke and heat detectors, sprinklers, and any other active systems like fans, and building maintenance services. It also includes things like security systems and audio and visual systems. What I've got here is a plan showing really how we managed to get the services through the building in the first place. So I mentioned to you guys before that in most multi-storey buildings, the concept of having a core. And a core is a place that it's a space that's duplicated all the way up the building, and inside that core is usually lifts, which are our vertical transportation, also stairs, but we also have a couple of ducts here, and what I've shown here is what we call a wet and a dry duct. So the wet duct is anything to do with water or fluids, and the dry duct is anything to do with electrical and air conditioning, generally. And so we've got this one level here with the core on there. I haven't shown the other bits and pieces because I wanted to concentrate on how we feed through the services from floor to floor. So the example here shows with the air conditioning how we feed through supply and return air. So for example, these two ducts here, the green one could be supply air duct, and that would go through the building and have outlets at certain locations, depending on the internal layout. You can imagine that there would be offices and more layouts in here, which would mean that we'd have to have more air supply diffusers depending on the layout. And we've also got a return air duct. So on every level, the air gets extracted from the floor and taken out through this vertical duct. In the same way that this vertical duct here, the supply duct, provides air to every level. And so what we essentially have is like a main artery running up and down the building with branches out at every level. Essentially we end up duplicating that type of layout on every level. If we look, for example, at the installation of fire services, we would see that we would have a vertical riser coming up through this duct, and then the duct would branch off and the fire sprinklers would be attached throughout. And the reason I haven't shown all of this is this would be a very complicated diagram to show this. So what I've done is just showing the air conditioning as a concept here. This cross section here shows how the central service duct feeds the main air conditioning supply and extract up and down the building with the branches at the different levels. And when we get to the top of the building, we end up having plant. And you've probably seen mechanical plant on a building before. It varies depending on the building size, but what we see here is 8 condenser units. And essentially what they do is they provide heating or cooling fluid that then allows us to heat or cool the air inside the building. On larger buildings, we could have large air handler units which provide the intake and the extract. And in fact, what I haven't shown on this is we would expect to have an air handler unit on here to push the fresh air through and extract out the used air. It's not uncommon on large buildings to have cooling towers, and they provide heating and cooling requirements for the air conditioning systems as well. One thing that's really important here is there are so many different services and there's so many different trades involved in those services that the coordination of the installation is really critical for it to happen effectively. If you think about separate trades for electrical, for data, for air conditioning, for the lift installation, for fire services and building maintenance units, a whole lot of stuff that goes on, and the sequence of that construction is important. One thing we'll also look at in the lecture is actually how we access and maintain this equipment after we've actually got it into the building. So, look, thanks for checking this out, and we'll cover this in more detail in the class.